So I'm Delphine Pernot. I work at Adelphe for eco-design services. I help companies trying to develop more eco-designed packaging. Okay, better. Previously, on a previous presentation, you heard about the EPR legislation. Actually, Adelphe exists because of the EPR legislation. So what is this legislation? In this legislation that is dated from the 90s in France, it is said that companies that put on the market packaged product have to contribute financially to the collection and the recycling of those packaging. So, for instance, you put a bottle of wine or you put a yogurt on the market. It is sold to a household consumer. In France, you have to pay for the collection and the recycling of that. Okay, it is an obligation by the law. Obviously, you are not going to do it by yourself. You need something that is mutualized, because this bottle of this yogurt will be found in what we call in France the yellow bin at each house or each building. And this is dealt by the municipalities. So you need someone to coordinate the municipalities and the companies that has to pay this kind of fees. We are a part of CTO, which was previously called Eco-Emballage. So maybe some of you know better Eco-Emballage than CTO or Adelphe, but we are the same company. At Adelphe, we are specialized in wine and spirits and drug sector. I don't know why, but that's the sector we are specialized in. So, how do all of this works? We are a private company, but we are a non-profit company, okay? So our purpose is to make this circularity work, is to collect the money and help the municipalities implement recycling schemes and recycle packaging. We work very closely with the French government and the French Environmental Agency. Actually, we work under an agreement from those, setting up some targets and setting up some obligation. One of these obligation is actually to work closely with companies in order to improve eco-design for recycling. So that's completely the subject of here. The thing is, for now in France, there is a lot of pressure on recycling. There is a subject regarding CO2 and climate change, but there is more and more pressure regarding recyclability. I say that because in some cases, when you are looking for recyclable option, maybe you will choose something that is more impactful regarding CO2, okay? So it's really important that you have to understand it's always better to find best balanced solution. But you have this importance in France regarding recyclability. Of course, it's not only France, Europe, of course, globally, it's a really important subject. But it's definitely a big pressure in France. There is a new law that has been adopted in France this month, actually. It's been discussed between our National Assembly and our Senate, and it's been approved 2 weeks ago or 1 week ago, I don't remember, but very recently. This law will set up very high and important target regarding recyclability, and it will set a path to decrease single-use plastic packaging. And not only bottle packaging, all kind of single-use plastic packaging, okay? It said in this law, they are setting some targets. It says, for instance, that every packaging that will be put on the market for companies that are bigger than 10,000 units sold and bigger than 10 million turnover will be obliged to sell only packaging that are recyclable. Okay? So this is like real. There is no option. You will have to find something recyclable. What I'm coming to is what we can say about plastic packaging. Plastic packaging is really complicated to recycle. We've seen an example of initiative within hospital. That's really brave and really hard to work within hospital, but it's really also difficult to work within the yellow bin. And your product as a drug will be fine in hospital, but also into the yellow bin in France. And you will have to follow this kind of regulation. So, if we look at plastic packaging, what is the issue? The issue is we are not, in theory, you could recycle everything, okay? But now the goal is to go from the theory to the reality. I just go very quickly through the previous slide showing the ecosystem of the recyclability. My point was on this slide to show you that when you design something to be recyclable, you don't have to do it just by yourself. You have to do it discussing with actors of the end of life. And that's actually what we are trying to do at Adelphe. We are trying to gather people that work on end of life and recyclability, and with companies that put on the market to have them discuss. Why? Because the definition of a product that is recyclable will have to meet a list of criteria. Those criteria we are working on with the French government and the French National Environmental Agency. One of the criteria will be for people to have access to a collecting point. Okay? If your packaging is only collected through a very specific collecting stream that is not available for every citizen in the country, it will not be considered as recycled in France. Okay, so you will need to be able to be put on the yellow bin, let's say, for instance, to be considered as recycled. When you are put into this bin and collected by the municipalities, all the packaging goes to a sorting unit. Okay, and in these sorting units, in order to be recyclable, your packaging will need to be identified and will need to be sent to a very specific recycling stream. There is a few number of limited of recyclable plastic stream in those kind of sorting unit. Why there is so few streams? It's an economical reason. You need to have a certain level of quantity that could be collected at national level in order to have recycler that will accept and have an economical viable activities with it. So actually for France, you can see here on the 4 steps that there is only a few streams that are recyclable in France so far. That will be PET, PE, PP, and flexible composed of PEBD. PS is something that is under development. That's the only stream so far. Okay. In the near future, there is probably a little bit more streams such as flexible PP that could be developed, but there will not be so many more than this. My point is, if you want to develop a product that is recyclable, you will have to fit within those categories. And the first point to fit into those categories will be to be only monomaterial, so no mix of, for instance, plastics and metals. And the better will be to only be one resin of plastic and one resin within those one here. So that's not a good news, I will say, for you at the pharmaceutical industry. Because if we take the example of the blister packaging, you are not on the list here, and you are a mix of aluminum and plastics. So that's bad news for you. Sorry. The good news is we are trying to work with you on that. We really want to help the pharmaceutical industry to find solution with this blister. This is maybe not for every company, but for most of the companies, this is the main product that they are producing. This really needs to be worked on, and there is a focus to be put on, because the composition will make it not recyclable. Alors, you will tell me, oh, okay, I know a company in Brazil, or I know a company in Spain that is able to collect it and to, for instance, to split the PVC from the aluminium and to recycle either aluminium or the PVC. I will say yes, but it's not working in the mainstream. It's working, for instance, if you have something very pure, only empty blister, and not contaminated with anything. And I don't think you can find enough blister in a country to fill a stream like that. So I think the best choice for having a blister to be recycled is to try to make it enter into the existing recycling stream. So this is kind of a challenge, because you use PVC for a reason. It has a very good barrier. For instance, it is good with your machine. But I think it's really time for you as a pharmaceutical company to work and identify alternative that is compatible for all your product and that is compatible with your machine. It is also important to find alternative that will decrease also the impact on climate change. Because as I said in my introduction, sometimes when you want to have something recyclable, you have a larger CO2 impact. And actually, for PVC, one of the advantage was to have a very low CO2 impact, because it has lots of C for chlorine and not so many C for CO2. So it was a good solution within this regard. But with the context now, I do believe that it is really important to work and to find alternative. So that's what we are trying to do in France. As I said, Adelphe is a collaborative company trying to gather pharmaceutical industries, but also end-of-life actor. We have launched a working group this year in order to work on this subject. We are gathering companies such as Biogarant, Boiron, Janssen, UCB Pharma, Mayoli, Pierre Fabre, Servier, Vetoquinol, Novartis, and other, and Sanofi. I said Sanofi maybe already. So meaning that there are lots of companies taking this subject. We still need to convince them of the needs to act, because the first meeting we had, one of the main subjects was, okay, but you don't realize, if we have to change everything, if we have to change PVC, then we are going to have to change all our authorization, we are going to change all our machine. So we really understand that it's quite a burden, but what we want to share as a message within this working group is that we believe that it is a necessity, and the sooner the better you take this issue, the better you will solve this issue, and you will be, let's say, more impacted if you are in advance. We also work with a packaging company within this working group, such as Amcor, Techniplast, Honeywell, or Constantia. We believe that this is the way we need to do it, meaning we need to have at the table pharmaceutical industry, plastic packaging industry, and actor of end of life. So we want to work step by steps. First, we want to convince pharmaceutical company of the needs to find alternative. there is some alternative already existing on the market, but what we need to do now is to sit at a table and to know if the alternative available is adaptable for every use that you are doing, and if it improves the environmental footprint. Yeah. There is several issues and several solutions that could be worked on. As you know, the blister packaging, to be simple, is something made of PVC on one side and aluminum on the other side. So if you want to recycle the plastic part in France, there is no stream for PVC as packaging. You will find recycling of PVC for windows or stuff like that, but that's 100% pure PVC and a huge amount of quantity. That's not the case for packaging. You are not the only one. Huh? There is other sectors that are concerned by the switch from PVC to another plastics. So first of all, if you want to recycle mainly the plastic part, you will need to switch to another resin. And you will have to work on the aluminum part, because in most of the cases, it's not compatible. You cannot recycle something that is made of aluminum and plastics. I say in most of the cases because I'm speaking about mechanical recycling. Of course, if we look at chemical recycling, there is new possibilities. But as you mentioned previously, mechanical recycling has the better footprint, best footprint that chemical recycling. So I think it's quite interesting to work on this first area. The other solution would be to say, we look at the aluminum part, because in your difficulties, you have one good thing, is that you have aluminum. Aluminum is quite valuable. And actually in France, there is also a project to collect and recycle packaging that are made of small part of aluminum. And given the fact that blisters are quite small in size, it is quite probable that blister will end up into what we call the too small part into the sorting unit. You have to imagine that in the sorting unit of packaging, there is the first step is like a washing machine, putting out all the little pieces that could damage the rest of the process. And within this mix of small packaging, in France, we are developing a project that put, let's say, a machine that can capture aluminum within this. So this could be also a solution to focus on the aluminum part in order to recycle the aluminum part. But also in this case, unfortunately, PVC is not accepted, as it will produce dioxide when it's recycled, and it will also corrode the equipment. So in each cases, you see that I think PVC is a problem. But I think altogether we can find and we can map those alternatives in order to find a better solution and to find something that you could implement quite quickly on your new product and that you could afterwards implement step by step to all your product. So we are really looking forward to welcome new members into this working group, because the better, the more we are, the better the work will be. And I think it's really important to hear from all of you what alternative you are trying to implement. Bio-based alternative, for instance, could be really interesting also to fight against what I said about climate change issue in this switch. That's too much text. I said already this. Okay, so if you have any question, I am available.
Have we got any questions? Is it a shift to bottles in France then? Is that the most feasible thing? Yeah, okay. Well, that's that one solved. Oh, question?
How much is this
So Adelphe is a French company, but of course we work with companies that are worldwide. And I think it's interesting to experiment in France something, because I believe in the UK you will find the same issue. I've read recently that PVC is also targeted into the plastic regulation in the UK. I believe it will be targeted in all European countries. So what you experiment in France will be useful in other countries.
So when is done, is there also then already contacts with other groups like yours from other countries to share ideas or?
So I don't think there is other specific working group like mine in other country, but there is other bodies like us, like we are called eco-organism. There are other eco-organism in other country, and we work closely to share our work within European countries.
One more quick question regarding the timeline of that shift. Yesterday, it sounded like that. That's the reason I'm asking. When is the switch to away from PVC the latest mandatory?
In which company do you work?
I work for a resin supplier, not for a
Okay.
PVC resin
Okay.
supplier.
No, because I would say I will send you the question back. I think there is no technical issue
No, the reason I'm
for the
asking
switch.
is
Yeah, I think the
for
issue
pharma
will be
company.
more for the company willing to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I think we really need to have this discussion about the need to switch and how you could do it with economical valuable option. But I think the sooner the better. If you want to be, what I said about the regulation, for instance, the target is 2030 to have 100% recyclable packaging in France. There are also targets. I think there is one also in 2025 saying that all plastic packaging should be recyclable. So the timeline is not the same, but it's in 5 years, it's nothing, especially for your sector.
I love a bit of controversy. So we've got one more question, because I think this is a really important topic, because there's probably a reason that we haven't changed the materials for many years. Partly laziness, but PVC is actually a very, very good material. Our equipment is based around it. I said it earlier on, we've done all our stability testing with all our heritage products. All the regulatory files would have to be reopened. And obviously there is always the thing, I like blisters over bottles because blisters help adherence. I still don't know why we sell tablets in 30s. It's terribly confusing for patients. It should be 28s. But I think before we push for stuff like this, we have to understand the patient view as well. And I think that's important. And that's why there's no one company can do this. You have to do that in a very aligned way. And there's nothing worse than letting bureaucrats make decisions. Because I've seen it with the taxes in the UK. I think it's important that pharma sits around the table, the equipment suppliers, the material suppliers, and we do have to look to resolve this. But I think that we have to also understand the scope of change and the challenge of change, because you don't want to be doing things that have a negative indirect impact, and that will ultimately be probably on the patient. So that's where we have to think. Sorry, one more question, because the last session is actually timed really well, because it is looking at the challenge of replacing PVC.
I've just a quick one.
Go on then.
Just a quick one. So you're just talking about from Celje in Switzerland, actually. So you're talking about plastic blisters only. So what about we're switching all to alu and throw the blisters to aluminum recycling? Works very well.
I'm not the expert, but I believe aluminium blister also contains PVC as a layer. Yeah. So the issue is a little bit the same, but yeah, there is more aluminium than you could add it to the aluminium stream, but you still have the issue of PVC within it. And just to finish with your last point, I didn't mention, but in this French law, there is also a new obligation to put in place. I don't know exactly the word in English, you will excuse me, but I think it's unit dose dispensing. Does it make sense? Yeah, so that's a new obligation to set up this for a drug that could be compatible with that. This will not help us regarding recyclability, but I think it's a good idea regarding the waste of drugs, of course, but I understand that you have to deal with lots of obligation that could go from one direction and on the other way to the other direction. For instance, if we think of 1 unit dose, it will be much more smaller, and the smaller the packaging are, the more difficult they are to be recycled because they are difficult to be sorted. So there is a lot of issue, and I think there is a lot of need to work all together on those issues.